Just doing a look around the LodgeiT system. So what you'll notice is that the first entity or the primary entity that you use to set up LodgeiT with is going to have a practice type. One of three: tax agent, BAS agent, or business entity. In this case, we'll work on the basis that we've set up as a business entity, and the type of entity we've set up is a company. This is important because this will then determine the types of forms that this entity will be able to create, or you'll be able to create for this entity. So if you notice here, I can only create a company tax return. Now, if you have gone and set up other entity types, so let's have a look down here. We've got a family trust. Now, if you've set up another entity on the platform that you also want to lodge for, then what you're going to find is that this will have different types of forms. So because this is a trust, and it's a trust because we can see it's set up as a trust over here, then what you'll have is you'll have form types as trust. So if I'm adding a trust tax return, then this tax return, and I won't import any financials, we'll just use the form as it is. You'll notice that this form is set up for a trust. The next thing you'll notice is that for the profile entity and every other entity that you set up on the system, you need to have contact details. The contact details will be the primary signatory on the form. You'll notice that you'll have contact details including addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses. If you're a tax agent, the phone numbers for your clients become important, and so do the emails, obviously, because you may want to send out those forms to the clients to sign. But if you're just a business entity, as in the example that I'm providing, then this is probably going to be yourself. Now you'll notice here that these are clients that are selected from the database. So Sean Edwards, in this case, will be a client in the system, and the client in the system will have profile for himself. Now, if you're a business, you're not going to need to worry about the details for this particular person, which I guess is going to be yourself, because you're not going to be using the system to lodge your individual tax return. You just cannot use LodgeiT to lodge individual tax returns unless you are a tax agent. So going back to the basis that this is a company and the practice type is business entity, whereby you're lodging your own company tax return, then the next thing to consider is to have a look at your settings for the software ID. So the LodgeiT system won't work unless you've taken a copy of the software ID, visited the ATO Access Manager, logged in, and we do have some videos on the LodgeiT help guides that will show you how to do that. But you'll need to connect your ID into the Access Manager. You can also do that by calling the ATO. And you can also watch the video guide here. So there's the video guide. You cannot use the system without connecting this in. Now, if you're a business or if you're a tax agent or BAS agent, you'll have wanted to drop in any of the other entities that you want to lodge for. So let's say that you've got Apple, Pty, which is one of your clients, or in the case of a business, one of your other companies that you manage. Then of course you're going to have added Apple as a client, and you will also have to again make sure the contact details, so you've added the person and also got the email address for Sean and the phone number for Sean. So you can see we've got that same person in here for Apple, who will be the signatory. Now again, when you've got another company as a business, and this is not going to apply if you're a tax agent, you will have needed to go and log into the ATO Access Manager again for this particular company and again grab that software ID. You can use the same software ID, go to the ATO Access Manager and paste that in against Apple Pty Ltd. You can obviously see that this allows you to use the LodgeiT platform in a similar manner to a tax agent, where you're adding all of your companies, your various entities, your trusts, your partnerships, your super funds, and you're able to then manage all of them off the same platform with the same software ID. But in the case of, as I say, if you're a business operator, you're going to need to take that and place that software ID against each. You're going to have to use separate software logins each time you go into the ATO Access Manager. You're going to use your same MyGov ID to log in, but you're going to have to make sure that you've connected your different entities in the ATO Access Manager so that you can add that software ID for all of the entities that you're looking after. That's a separate matter to using the LodgeiT software. Once you've set up, you'll notice that we've got the primary entity set. You've got the contact details in. The contact details will flow into filling the tax form. So if we have a look at the tax form now in a little bit more detail, this has been a company tax return. So let's add another one. I'll open that 2025 tax return again. Okay, so this one already exists. Let's open it up. And what we'll notice is on the front cover here, you will have the contact details. And if you don't, you need to add them in. So here, we're going to have Sean Edwards, right? So you can see that'll populate like that. You also obviously have to, if you are working on a tax form, you'll have to understand some of the basics. You can either go to our help guides or search the ATO website on these matters. And also what you'll notice is that we have a tax research assistant, which you can go and query if you've got questions. You'll notice that there's chats by other people. You can ask it things like, for instance, in the case of a base rate entity, if you don't understand these questions, you can go into our research tool here and you can chat about it and find out, or you can go directly to the company tax guide. So what is a base rate entity? And the system will pull this out of the ATO and it'll explain to you, and you can read about what a base rate entity is to figure out if that applies to you or not. So the guides are there, use them. When you are working in the forms, you'll notice that we've got the master navigators on the forms along the top, and we've got the sub-navigation on the bottom here for each section. Moreover, note that the sections are able to be disabled. So if you don't need the sections, they're just not going to show. But if you do need them, so you'll notice them dropping away there, right? So if you do need to report interest, partnership, put it in. And moreover, note that for partnership, trust income, capital gains, dividends, and interest, you need to put in the tax value. So if you've imported the accounts for those income types, you're still going to need to add in the tax value. When you are working in a form, use the validate button to find any of your errors. Click on the error, search to where the error is. So you can see here we need to say the company type, and then validate again. Once there's no errors, you'll just have this yellowy color. That means that you can proceed from here and you can complete the form. When the form is completed, the form will be locked. If you want to work on the form again, you need to unlock it. That's just part of the audit trail when you do the unlock, and then you can go back to working on the form. For companies, trusts, partnerships, super funds, and individuals who are sole traders, you're best off importing a set of accounts. If you don't have accounting software, use Excel. And what you'll have is the ability to import the financials, and those financial information details that come in with the accounts and the profit and loss and the balance sheet will auto-populate into that tax form. So you'll notice that this form is now auto-filled, and this will definitely save you a whole lot of time, both in terms of what goes to the profit and loss and the financial information section. And moreover, you should pay attention to the reconciliation module and follow our guides for the reconciliation module to understand how this reconciliation module works, because essentially what it does is it ties the accounting income to the taxable income, which is used to calculate the tax. Quick look across the system. We've got dashboards. The forms dashboard will probably be your primary dashboard that covers all the forms for all of your clients. If you've connected LodgeiT to the ATO and you've got your clients in the LodgeiT database, then what you'll notice is that all of the forms will start to load in here for which you have an obligation to lodge. And in the case of those entities where you manage the activity statement, or you want LodgeiT to be used for managing the activity statements, be sure to enable the manage activity statements here. Also over here, we've got our reports dashboard. So if you're building financial reports, noting that we do have, so if we go to the reports dashboard again, and if we're going to work on a given client, when you create reports, so we're here in the reports dashboard, you can add reports, and you'll notice that we have a free financial reporting module that will allow you to produce your statutory financial reports. If you want financial reports with more capability, like for instance page breaks, ability to export to Word, multi-periods, more than one comparative period for instance, and also notes, then you can use the Financial Pro version. You can also use LodgeiT for generating legal documents, things like for instance company constitutions, minutes of meetings, engagement letters, and the like. Now, of course, you don't have to use any of these. If you're just going to be using the forms, you're really going to be focused on the settings and the forms. But if you want to use our other capabilities, we've got the custom reports, we've got work papers, so you can create work papers for your clients. You've got plenty of tools and reports in here. All of these things are covered in our help guides if you want to learn how to use them. I showed you the importing of the financials. The important thing when importing financials is that you should consider, after doing the import, managing the mappings. So you can see here we've got mappings. Mappings are very easy. It's really a case of looking in the taxonomy and seeing what that, so if you've got asset type and you've got a line item in your accounts called Commonwealth Bank number 6848, where will that map? That'll go to the bank accounts. So you're going to do that for all of these. These are pretty elementary. So you can see trading revenue, probably the most common classification for line items in the revenue sector. But you could well have something else, like for instance, you could have rental income. In that case, you will be mapping that as follows. Okay. Same in the expenses. Now, are these direct costs or indirect costs? Direct costs being directly associated with driving your revenue, and the indirect costs, those costs that don't vary with the revenue. Also through here, you've got your work tab. Now the work tab allows you to keep track of work that, at least from an accountant's perspective, bookkeeper's perspective, gets to an on review stage. So you're tracking it with a different set of semantics that will help you manage your work. You've got your client sector here. This is where you can come and manage your clients, adding new clients, importing clients from legacy systems, and even exporting clients. You can put your clients into family groups, and when you've got the clients in family groups, you've got the ability to see which client is in the group, which makes it easier to manage, especially when you've got large family groups and entities have names that might not be directly related to the family as such. You've got settings, so to reach the settings, gear wheel, don't forget we've had a look at the profiles already, but what we're looking at here is the settings for the system. So if you're coming in here, if you're a business, you're going to have limited settings, but let's just go back and change this back to being a tax agent. Because if we're a tax agent or a BAS agent, then your settings become more, well, we're going to need a BAS agent number here. Let's try this. And what you'll notice now is that when we go to the settings, you've got a whole lot more settings. So I'm not going to go through these in detail now, but have a look through these if you're signing up as a BAS agent. They become important. Business owner, you're doing your own lodgements, not so important. For every entity on the system, of course, you've got your settings, general and contact details I've covered. People is for bookkeepers, bank managers, third parties that you might want to keep track of in relation to a given entity. Tax returns, I showed you here where you want to make sure that you enable the activity statements if you are lodging activity statements for the given entity from LodgeiT. If you're using our legacy depreciation module, you'll want to activate it. So you can't use the legacy depreciation module unless you specify a start date. Though what we have now is we have depreciation in the tax forms, embedded in the tax forms. So there's no need to come out and do your calculations outside the tax form. You can very easily quick add your assets directly in here. Noting that we've suggested the entity, the asset type, the purchase date. If it's in a time frame before the current financial year, you'll need to establish the opening written down value, the method, diminishing value, the rate, and the business use. And what you'll notice is the depreciation is calculated, and moreover it's injected into the correct section of the tax form. If you are importing accounts, then your accounting depreciation, in this case, if it's not a base rate entity, will be treated as non-deductible. So that's for depreciation. Now, I'm just pointing out that this is the method for calculating your tax depreciation. If you want to calculate separate accounting depreciation, by all means use our legacy depreciation tools. Teams, if you're tax agent, BAS agent, you might want to set up and work with teams. You can control access to forms using, or to clients using access controls. The teams are all driven through here. So adding and managing your teams go in there, very easy. Notes, of course, you've got the ability to store some notes. Now, if you are going to use LodgeiT to generate financial statements, you want to make sure your relationships are correct, because the directors' names will be published onto the financial statements. So if we're building out a set of financials, noting that these are all the templates that I've built. So in your system, you won't see all these. You'll just see the trading or non-trading. Trading is if you've got revenue or cost of goods. Change the name of that if you need. And noting that the name of the director is populating in there. So you'll need that if you want to use our statutory financial statements. Once you are working inside the financial statements, there's plenty of flexibility around here in terms of what you can change. So I very quickly will show you some things you can do. Change names of any of the accounts or categories. You can decide what you're going to roll up. You can remove certain sectors. So these are category sectors that you might find a little bit, I guess, unnecessary. So you're just simplifying to a degree. You're deciding what you're sort of rolling up, or really maybe you're going to leave it exposed. It's up to you. And again, removing categories. Whatever you want to do here, if you prefer, you can always come along and you can deal with it in the report templates. So go and build yourself a report template so you can reuse whatever changes you do, noting that if you're making changes to the free report templates, change the template for the relevant entity type. So if you're working with companies, make a template for companies, noting all the templates that I've made as parts of examples. But for yourselves, very easy, just come and create the custom template from there like that. And you can do exactly the same for the Financial Reports Pro or the Legal Docs. Finishing off with a look at your settings. So system settings, you can add your branding, notifications, client reminders, make changes to those, connect the mail server that you want to ride your mail out to your clients on. If you want to synchronize your clients with QuickBooks, so you can bill out of QuickBooks or invoice out of QuickBooks, activate that. And then also go to the client sync, and you'll notice how we've synchronized our clients between the two systems. Outcome of assessment, if you want the system to automatically trigger an email to your client with details about their notice of assessment, just simply activate this and LodgeiT grabs those notices of assessment, or in this case, digital variant called an outcome of assessment, sends it out to the client. Keep track of what's going on in the dashboard for forms on the far right. I'm not going to show you right now, but when you've set up your system, if you're a tax agent, take a look. If you need fee from refund, you need the EFT reconciliation statements, exporting your clients and using the export to solve for the client lists in ATO Mate or ATO Smart Docs if you're looking for that level of document automation. And then over here as a final look, we've covered the report templates, talked about the client sync. You've got an organizational log to see who's doing what in the system. And if you want to take advantage of switch org, if you want to run two tax agent numbers, or if you're sharing your tax agent number with two separate client lists, then you can use the switch org function. Finally, whatever you want to buy out of the system, you're going to come along here to billing. And this is essentially where you can take advantage of buying what you want. So I'm already on a plan, so I can't buy certain things, but the way that the buying will work is always like this. Whatever you want to buy, you simply click on it, noting the row, so that's for that. Either you're buying packages, bundles of packages, or you're just buying one-offs. And the same there with the franchise, we call that the franchise license if you want to use the switch org function. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. The only thing left to say is come down here if you need support. Here you can search for and discover information on how to. But if you get stuck, don't hesitate to contact us. Reach out to us with a subject and description. Make your description as concise as possible. It's more likely you'll get a good response. And if possible, take some screenshots using the tool here, or add your own documents or your own snapshots that you've taken of your pain point in the LodgeiT system. And our team typically respond within about 40 minutes during business hours. Infrequently on weekends and long weekends.